There are moments in a star's life when the spotlight doesn't just shine, it burns. For Yaman, one of Turkey's most recognizable faces, admired not only for his charisma on screen but also for his larger-than-life presence off it, that burning spotlight has followed him everywhere. To millions of fans around the world, he is the symbol of charm, passion, and power. But what if behind that carefully crafted image lies a truth so dark, so shocking, that he himself tried to bury it for years? Tonight, we open the curtain on a side of Yaman the world was never supposed to see. This is not just about an actor, it's about a man who has lived with secrets, regrets, and the heavy weight of choices that could have destroyed everything he built. It all began with his meteoric rise to fame. When Can appeared on the screens in Erkenci Kuş, alongside Demet, the chemistry was electric. Fans fell in love instantly, magazines couldn't stop printing their faces, and social media exploded with images, rumors, and endless debates about whether their romance was real or just part of the script. For Can, this was the beginning of global recognition, but also the beginning of something darker. The more famous he became, the more difficult it was to control what the public knew about him. Behind the cameras, away from the flashes, Can wasn't always the flawless man fans thought they knew. Sources close to him revealed that he battled with anger, insecurity, and a constant pressure to maintain the image of perfection. He was expected to be a hero, the perfect gentleman, the man who always had everything under control. But in reality, he often felt trapped, suffocated by expectations he could never truly meet. The shocking secret? It wasn't about a scandal in the tabloids or a hidden relationship that fans never discovered. It was something much more personal. Can carried with him a truth that he desperately tried to hide, a struggle with identity, with vulnerability, and with the fear of losing those he truly loved. In private conversations, he admitted that the more people adored him, the more he felt like he was losing himself. Fame gave him everything, money, recognition, opportunities, but it also took away the freedom to live as just Can, the man, not Yaman, the global star. And this conflict reached its breaking point during his most intense relationship, the one that defined him in the eyes of millions, his bond with Demet. What the cameras didn't show, what the interviews never revealed, was the secret that weighed heavily on Can's heart. He knew from the start that their love story, no matter how powerful, was going to collide with the reality of his fame. There were moments, whispered in private, where he confessed to friends, "If I truly let her in, if I truly show her who I am behind the mask, she might not stay." This is the dark truth that Can tried so hard to keep from the world. The fear that he was unlovable without the image, without the fame, without the endless admiration. And yet, in Demet's presence, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, real acceptance. But the very secret he carried, the part of himself he never dared to reveal fully, would eventually become the wall that stood between them. As Can's fame spread from Turkey to Italy and beyond, the pressure only grew heavier. He was no longer just a TV star, he became an international phenomenon. Magazine covers called him the Turkish heartthrob, Italian fans lined up at airports just to catch a glimpse, and entire cities shut down when he made public appearances. To the outside world, Yaman looked untouchable. But inside, he carried a secret storm. What most people didn't know was that Can's sudden rise didn't just bring him adoration, it brought him enemies. Rivals in the industry, gossip columnists hungry for dirt, and even people close to him began questioning his every move. And every headline that painted him as arrogant, every photo that showed him losing his temper, only fueled the whispers, "Is this the real Yaman?" Can himself struggled with those questions. Who was the real Can? Was he the strong, confident man who could make millions swoon with just a smile? Or was he the vulnerable boy who grew up searching for acceptance, terrified that people would walk away if they saw his flaws? This inner war became his darkest truth, one he refused to show the world. But there were cracks in the mask. Insiders recall nights when Can would disappear from glamorous events, locking himself away, refusing to speak to anyone. Friends said he would sit in silence, his eyes heavy, as if the weight of an entire world rested on his shoulders. In those moments, he admitted his deepest fear: "They love the image, not me. If I lose the image, I lose everything." This fear didn't just haunt his career, it haunted his relationships. With Demet Özdemir, the woman fans were convinced was his soulmate, things became complicated. To the cameras, their chemistry was magical. But behind closed doors, Demet began to see glimpses of the truth he tried so hard to bury. There were days when he was distant, unreachable, as if carrying a secret he couldn't share. She would ask, "What's wrong, Can?" and he would answer with silence, or a smile that never reached his eyes. For Demet, this was painful. She loved the man, not the star, but the star was always in the way. She wanted Can to open up, to reveal his heart completely, but he was terrified. What if, once she saw all of him, she left? What if love wasn't enough to hold the pieces of his broken self together? And then came the breaking point. In the middle of their rumored romance, when the world speculated about secret dates, hidden getaways, and late-night calls, Can made a choice that revealed more than he realized. He started building walls. He pulled back when he should have leaned closer. Instead of letting Demet into his private battles, he tried to protect her by keeping her out. But in reality, all it did was push her further away. The shocking secret wasn't that Yaman had scandals, or mistakes, or hidden affairs. No, the secret was much more human. It was his inability to face the truth about himself, his fear of being truly vulnerable, and the silent war that was tearing him apart inside. And yet, in the middle of all this, something happened that no one expected. A confession slipped out, not on stage, not in front of cameras, but in a private moment so raw that those who heard it never forgot. "I'm scared of being loved for the wrong reasons. I don't even know if anyone has ever loved me for who I really am." That single admission was the key to everything. It explained the distance, the unpredictability, the walls he built, and the relationships that seemed to fade before they could truly begin. It was the dark truth he never wanted revealed. The world only ever saw Yaman through the lens of perfection, every photo carefully curated, every smile polished for the cameras, every public appearance larger than life. But the truth is, Can's private reality often looked very different. While fans screamed his name in airports and paparazzi flashes blinded him at premieres, he sometimes returned home to an empty room, staring at his phone in silence, debating whether to call the one person who understood him the most. That person was Demet Özdemir. To the world, they were co-stars. To fans, they were a dream couple. But to Can, Demet represented something he had been missing his entire life, someone who could look at him and see the man, not the celebrity. Yet even with her, he couldn't fully drop the mask. His dark secret, the fear that he was never enough without the fame, kept him from letting her into the deepest parts of his soul. Demet tried. Those close to her remember how patient she was, how she told friends, "He's not just who people think he is. He's more sensitive, more fragile than anyone knows." She saw the storm inside him, and she wanted to be his anchor. But Can, terrified of losing her, made the very mistake that doomed them. He pushed her away to protect himself. And yet, the connection between them was undeniable. Every glance on set, every accidental touch, every laugh they shared behind the cameras only fueled the rumors. People said their chemistry was too real to be fake. But Can's silence about their bond wasn't just about protecting his image, it was about protecting his secret. He feared that if the world saw how much she meant to him, they would tear it apart. The darker side of fame began to show itself. Tabloids ran headlines painting him as arrogant, impulsive, even uncontrollable. Some called him too proud, others labeled him difficult. But those who really knew him whispered that these weren't signs of arrogance. They were signs of a man who was breaking under the pressure of carrying a secret life. He had built his world on perfection, but perfection is impossible to maintain. And every time the mask slipped, the world was quick to attack. There was one night, however, that became unforgettable. Insiders recall a private gathering where Can, away from the cameras, finally let his guard down. Surrounded by only a few trusted friends, he admitted in a low voice, "Sometimes I don't even know who I am anymore. They love Yaman, but I don't know if anyone has ever loved Can, the man." The room fell silent. It was the closest he had ever come to revealing the dark truth he had fought so hard to hide. For those who heard it, that confession was haunting. It explained everything: the temper, the sudden disappearances, the restless search for meaning, and the guarded heart that even Demet couldn't fully unlock. And perhaps the most tragic part? Ken himself didn't realize that this very fear, the fear of not being truly loved, was the thing that cost him the love he longed for most. Demet wasn't scared of the man behind the fame. She wanted him, all of him, even the vulnerable parts. But he couldn't believe it. He couldn't trust that love could survive without the spotlight. The turning point came when Yaman's career reached its absolute peak. Italy had fallen under his spell, producers fought over his signature, and his name became synonymous with success. But success can be the loneliest place of all. For every applause he received, there was a moment of silence behind closed doors. For every fan screaming his name, there was a night when he sat alone, replaying memories he could never forget. The truth he fought so hard to keep hidden began leaking out in small ways. In interviews, sharp-eyed fans noticed the pauses, the cracks in his perfect answers, the way his expression would shift when Demet's name came up. Once, during a press junket, a journalist asked about his past relationships, and instead of his usual confident reply, Can's eyes clouded. He simply muttered, "Not everything you see is what it seems." That sentence sparked thousands of headlines. But what few understood was that he wasn't talking about fame, he was talking about himself. In his heart, the darkest truth was simple: he had lived a double life. One for the public, filled with charm, passion, and control. The other, hidden deep within, filled with fear, loneliness, and the haunting belief that without his fame, he was nothing. This was the truth he tried to bury, the truth that almost cost him the one person who truly mattered. Demet Özdemir. Even after years apart, her presence lingered like a shadow in his story. Insiders claimed that whenever Can heard her name, his demeanor would change. Strong, untouchable Can would suddenly look human, vulnerable, even fragile. It was as if the memory of her reminded him not just of love, but of the secret he could never escape. She was the mirror who had seen his real face, and that terrified him. Yet despite everything, the walls, the silence, the missed chances, Can's greatest fear finally caught up with him. Alone one night, he confessed to a close confidant, "I thought if I hid my fears, I'd keep her safe. But I was only keeping myself alone." Those words, raw and unfiltered, were perhaps the purest truth he ever spoke. And so, the shocking secret Yaman tried to hide has finally been revealed, not a scandal for the tabloids, not a betrayal to shock the fans, but something far more human, far more heartbreaking. It was the fear of being truly seen. The fear of being loved not for the star he was, but for the man he really is. For years, he buried that truth under fame, under glamour, under endless performances for the world. But in the quiet moments, away from the spotlight, it was always there. That haunting doubt: if I take off the mask, will anyone stay? This is why his story captivates millions. Because behind the dazzling smile, behind the strength and confidence, there is a man who longs for the same thing we all do: to be loved, fully and unconditionally. And perhaps that's why his connection with Demet Özdemir continues to fascinate fans even today. She wasn't just a co-star, or a rumored lover, she was the one person who got close enough to glimpse the truth. The world may never know the full details of their bond. But one thing is certain: Yaman's dark truth is no longer hidden. It is out in the open, and it shows us that even the brightest stars can be haunted by shadows. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest twist in his story is yet to come. Because once the secret is revealed, the healing can finally begin.